Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Right Guardian put her hands on her hips and sneered at the sky. Walled donkey, stay if you have the guts to. Old woman, I can scold you for 3 days and 3 nights straight in all kinds of ways. A bodhisattva sneered, Shwebai, all you have left is that mouth of yours. Ignore them, said old Rulai who was on Mount Meru. If we continue squabbling with them, it may take us half a year. We have fought for a few 100 years and squabbled for a couple more, so there's no need to be impatient now. Let us take control of this battle first. The monks on the mountain didn't stop, and the apparition of Mount Meru floated over to the battlefield. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was still fighting with Teacher Paw and the rest, trying his best to get rid of all these strong practitioners before the apparition of Mount Meru reached them. At this moment, old Rulai's voice traveled over unhurriedly, Imperial Preceptor, Dao friends, can you guys do me a favor? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's sword chi dispersed, and he stopped chasing Teacher Paw and the bronze-masked man. With a smile, he said, Rulai, please speak. Excellent, may Dao friends hold back, old Rulai said solemnly. Teacher Paw and the rest were ready to make their moves when they heard Rulai and hesitated for a moment. True Lord Tien was coughing up blood endlessly since her heart and lungs had been injured by Imperial Preceptor's sword chi. With a sharp voice, she asked, Old Rulai, are you going to join hands to get rid of this evil? Old Rulai shook his head. Wanderer Li's expression changed slightly and he sneered. Could it be that Great Thunderclap Monastery has also become the dogs of Eternal Peace Empire like Heavenly Devil cult? Old Rulai shook his head again. Teacher Paw said indifferently, Old Dao friend, stop keeping us in suspense, just tell us directly. Old Rulai chuckled. I'm here to create good karma with everyone and settle this contentious issue. Everyone here is a cultivator, and if we continue fighting, how many heroes will be lost, how many inheritances will disappear? Why don't we turn hostility into friendship, be polite and amiable, putting an end to each other's karma? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's gaze wavered, but he did not say anything. Old Rulai looked at him and smiled. Imperial Preceptor is a kind man, and had come to my Great Thunderclap Monastery once. I spoke to Imperial Preceptor about Buddhism, about Mahayana, and formed good karma with him. May I know if Imperial Preceptor can return this good karma back to this old monk? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said solemnly, back then I was still young and traveled the world to seek knowledge. When I came to Great Thunderclap Monastery, Rulai didn't have sectarian bias and gave me pointers for my cultivation, therefore I can be considered half a disciple of Great Thunderclap Monastery, and it's only right of me to return this good karma. However, how would I know if I'm not releasing the tiger back into the mountains? These people are the masterminds behind the rebels, would they give up just like this? If they rebel again, lives are going to be lost again. Rulai, you are benevolent and should know what I'm worried about. Old Rulai smiled. Old monk will make them convert to Great Thunderclap Monastery, and not interfere with the matters of the mundane world anymore. What does Imperial Preceptor think of this? Imperial Preceptor didn't express any opinion. Old Rulai smiled as he looked at Teacher Paw and the rest. Everyone here was outstanding talents back in the day, and had magnificent styles unmatched in our generation. After being powerful your entire life and living through an era in splendor, would you guys be willing to put down your arms and convert to Buddhism? True Lord Tien sneered, Old Rulai, with us in your Great Thunderclap Monastery, won't it be easy to eliminate this evil? Do you think your Great Thunderclap Monastery will be safe if you give up on this chance now? After Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor eliminates us, he will definitely eliminate Buddha as well. Why aren't you showing your devil-subduing methods and attack him mercilessly now? Old Rulai smiled in answer. No matter how Imperial Preceptor treats my Buddhism, there will still be people that believe and worship Buddha. No matter if there are devils or gods in this world, while there's conviction, Buddhism won't disappear, just because Imperial Preceptor eliminates us, nor will it thrive if he supports us. If you are willing to let go of your grudges, follow me. If you aren't willing, this old monk can only say we're not fated. I'll take my leave. Suddenly, figures hurriedly descended from the sky and landed behind Imperial Preceptor. There were 100 generals of Eternal Peace Empire wearing blood-stained armor and radiating a desire to battle that surged into the sky. Duke Wei exclaimed with his big mouth, "What happened? Rulai is here to join in the fun too. Trying to take advantage. Imperial Preceptor, let us clean up this old monk and the rest of the bald." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his hand to stop him from saying any more. He then whispered, "It's not good to let both sides suffer. It's a good thing for old Rulai to come forth and mediate." Duke Wei was bewildered, not understanding what he meant. They are clearly here to take advantage, taking this chance to recruit the masterminds of the rebels into their great Thunderclap Monastery, strengthening its power. These masterminds are all powerful people, and letting them go is equivalent to letting the tigers back onto the mountain. There will be endless troubles afterward. Imperial Preceptor, think thrice. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled. Since old Rulai gave his word that they will not interfere with the matters of the mundane world after they convert to Buddhism, I believe him. You really believe him? Duke Wei stared with his eyes wide open. You can't trust a person with no hair on his head with an important task. When he was about to say more, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his hand and said indifferently, "Old Rulai is the head of Buddhism, and it's a good deed to come and resolve our grudges, returning peace back to the world. Furthermore, I'm also injured." On Mount Meru, the Bodhisattvas and Arhats heard what he said and turned their heads over. Old Rulai chanted one of the many names of Buddha to warn all the Bodhisattvas and Arhats. He then smiled. Since Imperial Preceptor is willing to resolve the grudges, how about you guys? Teacher Po and the rest of them looked one another in the eyes and nodded silently. If they didn't agree to convert to Buddhism, old Rulai would not lift his finger to save them. After he left with all the strong practitioners of Great Thunderclap Monastery, they would definitely die under the hands of Imperial Preceptor. For old Rulai to bring all of the strong practitioners of Great Thunderclap Monastery, this meant that he was determined to win. If they agreed to convert to Great Thunderclap Monastery, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor wouldn't dare to probe further. Old Rulai smiled. Since all senior brothers and sisters are willing to put down their grudges and convert to Buddhism, this world is an illusion and you're sure to achieve your Tao. Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor pointed at the bronze-masked man and said, "Rulai, he must stay." The bronze-masked man felt a lingering fear in his heart, and old Rulai frowned slightly. The Bodhisattvas, Arhats, and venerables on the apparition of Mount Meru chanted the many names of Buddha. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said with a smile, "He must stay." Even though his voice was light, his tone said that this was unquestionable and non-negotiable. Old Rulai sighed. This kind man, you have no fate with Buddhism. Teacher Po, fellow senior brothers and sisters, please come up the mountain. Teacher Po and the rest hesitated for a moment, looking at the bronze-masked man. They suddenly gritted their teeth and moved to Mount Meru. They said together in unison, "Old, we're sorry. There's no need for further words, I understand." The bronze-masked man laughed out loud. Imperial Preceptor, how are you going to deal with me? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said expressionlessly, "I'll take you down and escort you to the capital city to meet the Emperor." Escort me to the capital city to meet the emperor. The bronze-masked man's tone was quite weird when he spoke, but he smiled nonetheless. Then we'll have to see if Imperial Preceptor's sword is fast enough. He slowly raised his palm and suddenly smashed it against his bronze mask. It shattered into pieces, destroying the face beneath as well. Imperial Preceptor, the empire of Ling family will be ruined under your hands sooner or later. His head split open, and he died right away, but his body stood there straight like a rod and never collapsed. Duke Wei and the rest cried out and hurried forward while Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stood motionless. He hadn't intercepted the bronze-masked man when he was about to take his own life on purpose. On the mountain far away, the corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched when he saw this. For Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor to say that sentence was to force the bronze-masked man to suicide. No matter whose face was under the mask, he had to be someone high in the royal family, someone with an important position. He was a person of utmost importance to the emperor. If he was taken alive by Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and escorted into the capital city to meet the emperor, not only would the emperor be embarrassed, even the hearts of ministers would deviate. It would even become a problem for the emperor whether he should kill him or not. When his true face was revealed, the emperor's prestige would receive a severe hit and people from all levels of society would discuss it in secret, guessing if it was the man himself who had the intention to start a rebellion, or if it was the will of the emperor. At that time, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's prestige would surpass that of the emperor, and most of the ministers' heart would lean towards him as well. Even the emperor would start to guard against him. If an internal conflict between the emperor and Imperial Preceptor started, the empire would be in danger, and the Ling family would be in danger as well. As a higher-up of the royal family, the bronze-masked man had to take his life. He couldn't let the Ling family be on the defensive, throw its face away. Because of this, he had to disfigure himself, so that no one would know his true identity. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't stop him, as he hoped that the man would take his life. He didn't want to escort him to the capital city to meet the emperor. If the man didn't disfigure himself, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would have helped him do so. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't want to smack the emperor's face, or the Ling family's face. This was the best conclusion. If Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor really escorted this bronze-masked man back to the capital, it would mean that he really wanted to rebel and take over the throne. From the looks of it now, the throne didn't matter to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. He only wanted to borrow Eternal Peace Empire to execute his aspiration, to achieve the 3 immortal deeds. He wanted to become a saint. From Mount Meru, Rulai paid his respects to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Imperial Preceptor, now that everything is settled, this old monk will be taking his leave. Take care, Rulai, said Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, as he returned the formalities. The apparition of Mount Meru floated away to the west. Teacher Po, True Lord Tien, and the rest turned back their heads to see Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor giving the command to chop off the head of the bronze-masked man to bury it on the spot. The headless body was put into a coffin and prepared to be transported back to the capital. Wanderer Li sighed. Dao brother Rulai, if not for you. Old Rulai shook his head. There's no need to say anything more. Imperial Preceptor is already dissatisfied with my great thunderclap monastery. Let's go back to the mountain. I reckon my sinful disciple has already taken the opportunity to return to take his arm back. If we return in time, we might still meet him. The monks on the mountain were astonished. The apparition of Mount Meru floated past the mountain Qin Mu, and the rest were on, and sneers came from below again. Walled donkeys. The bodhisattvas, arhats, and venerables shouted one after another, evil creatures of the devil path. Old Rulai shook his head and halted Mount Meru. He looked down and put his palms together. Senior brother. Most of the hall masters and guardians were astonished. Sword Hall Master gently shook his head at Qin Mu, but Qin Mu waved his hand and bowed his head. Senior brother. Old Rulai revealed an astonished expression and nodded before leading everyone away. Cult Master, why did you have to return that bald donkey's greeting? Right Guardian Shwe Bai grumbled. Now that you exposed your true identity, you will be in the radar of that damned old badly. Something will definitely happen. As the sacred cult master, I can't not return the greeting after he greeted me as an equal. Qin Mu smiled. We can't keep hiding the fact that I'm the sacred cult master. Besides, I can't throw the face of all of you nor the face of the sacred cult. Everyone said in unison, we rather not have this face. On Mount Meru's apparition, a bodhisattva put his palms together. My Buddha, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said he was injured. Why didn't we take the chance? Is it real or fake? Old Rulai asked amiably and gently. The bodhisattva was stunned. Disciple does not know. Old Rulai smiled. Those that believed so have already lost, and some of them even died. Teacher Poor, it's because you guys believed he was injured that it was such a defeat, wasn't it? The expressions of Teacher Poor and the rest were ashen, and spiritual master Dao Quan blamed himself deeply. From the medicinal dregs of Qin Mu, he deduced that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had been severely injured and everyone believed him, which was why they had chosen the second choice, the martial way. However, he couldn't be blamed for it all. The surprise attack by the three old monsters of the old generation, Teacher Poor, Wanderer Li, and True Lord Tien, had to have severely injured Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. The three old monsters were the peak existences of today's world. No matter if it were their abilities or reputation, they were at the top in the martial world. No one would doubt the abilities of these three seniors. So even though Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was known as the genius that comes once in every 500 years, and had a high reputation, he still couldn't be compared to any of the three. It was because of this that everyone believed that he was severely injured. The tiny details that came after only strengthened this notion. For example, when he gave a lecture in Imperial College, he only did so for 2 days, and there was perfume to cover the stink of his wound. There was also the event of the Dragon King of Dragon Rider sect visiting Imperial Preceptor's manor at night and leaving unscathed. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor hadn't been able to hold him back. In the battle between Imperial Preceptor and Wanderer of Little Jade Capital, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries had relapsed, which was why he needed Qin Mu, this little divine physician, to nurse his body day and night. The deduction of spiritual master Dao Quan, and all kinds of other things indicated that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries had relapsed. It was then deduced that even with Qin Mu's treatment, he would require at least a month to recover. And all of this had begun when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was ambushed. From the very start, they were destined to be made use of in his scheme. The two choices were also part of the scheme. There had never been two choices, only one. It's not so easy to deal with a genius that appears once every 500 years, Old Rulai said indifferently. These 500 years don't only mean his wisdom, aptitude, and comprehension are that profound, but his strategies and tactics are also something one may see only once in 500 years. If such a genius can't become a saint, then he will become a lawless devil, and it won't be fortuitous to this world. Believe? He smiled, then said, fool. Everyone was bewildered. They didn't know why Old Rulai had said this kind of words, but they felt that his speech was concise and comprehensive, having a deep meaning. Beggar Sect Master Chi Dayo said, he had allied himself with Heavenly Devil Cult, and is destined to be a lawless devil. What a pity we don't know who's the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult. We know. Old Rulai smiled. It's none other than the young man that returned my greeting. Come to think of it, this old monk had a destiny with him and wanted to enlighten him to Great Thunderclap Monastery, but it's a pity that the destiny was suddenly broken and passed on to another wonderful being. It's him. Most of the monks, Teacher Paw, and the rest of people on Mount Meru were stunned for a moment. Old Rulai smiled. It's him. Those old Dao friends are quite remarkable, to have taught such a little devil. What a pity Kakara staff couldn't retain its destiny. I was only a step late, only a step. Imperial Preceptor, you're smarter than me, couldn't you see any problems with Mount Meru's arrival? Duke Wei looked at the headless body entering the coffin, and turned his head to talk to Imperial Preceptor, who was beside him. They were clearly here to take advantage of the situation, and save Teacher Paw, and the other old monsters, strengthening the power of their Great Thunderclap Monastery. If these people aren't rid of, there will be a problem in the future. Teacher Paw and the rest have only 10 to 20 years left, so they are of no concern, let old Rulai save them, said Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. I understand old Rulai's actions. It's as expected that he came to take advantage of the timing. I'm injured, so I had no strength to stop him. Duke Wei sized him up in suspicion, his expression quite weird. Real or fake? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said solemnly, it's real. Are you sure? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor scowled at him. Of course it's real. You try fighting with those cult master level existences. And there were even 3 godlike existences among them. How can I be unscathed when it was a fight to the death with them? I don't believe. Duke Wei said resentfully. I'd be a fool to do so. I won't believe a word you say. Those that believed you are all lying in coffins, unable to move an inch. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Actually, I'm quite truthful sometimes. That's why you can trick others convincingly. I can't read you. Duke Wei looked down at the coffin and kept quiet for a moment. You should know who is in the coffin. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. I can't say. I will know even if you don't say. When we go back to the capital, we will know once we see which old prince has suddenly died. Duke Wei looked left and right before whispering. There's a conflict in Ling family, and this won't be an isolated incident. What if the old Empress Dowager is the same? I feel that you should take a step further and just be the emperor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor glanced at him with murderousness in his gaze. Duke Wei jumped in shock and hurriedly said, You and I have been friends for over 200 years. Don't scare me. This isn't my idea, this is what the old brothers that are following you think. Your position has been raised to the max, so even if you do an enormous contribution, there will be no way for the emperor to raise your official position anymore. Now that you have done another huge contribution by quelling the rebellion, how do you want the emperor to reward you? To hand the throne over to you? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. The Emperor and I are bosom buddies. The Emperor knows me and knows I won't ask for credit. What I want is to achieve the aspiration of my lifetime. That's why the Emperor is troubled. If he won't reward you, everyone in the world will be bitterly disappointed. If he wants to reward you, there's nothing he can reward you with. Do you want him to give you beautiful women? Do you want him to give you gold? Duke Wei said in a low voice, The Emperor knows you well, but what about the Crown Prince? When the Crown Prince succeeds the throne in the future, will he know you as well as his father? What would the Crown Prince use to reward you? Furthermore, those old brothers that have followed you all their life can also get promoted if you go a step further. Some can't wait to be promoted, and if they want to achieve that, they have to support you up to the throne. What do you think Empress Dowager is worried about? About you. She's worried about those people under you. I seek my own path. There's no need for you to say anything else. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked forward while speaking calmly. It's tiring to talk to you. You shall just quell the rebellion properly, and clean up all the rebel remnants. I shall find the little divine physician to treat me. Treat you again? Duke Wei was puzzled. You're really hurt. You aren't lying to me again. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't give him a pleasant look and waved his hand as he walked away. Qin Mu brought the dragon Qilin, Chen Wanyun, Yu Qinghong, and the rest down the mountain. Meanwhile all the hall masters, as well as left and right guardians of Heavenly Devil Cult, activated their teleportation flags to leave. Below the mountain, Qin Mu and the rest met Imperial Preceptor. I'm injured, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said. PSSH, the dragon Qilin tried to stifle its laughter. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave a glance at this enormous creature, and the dragon Qilin immediately shut its mouth. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's complexion was a little pale as he told Qin Mu, I'm injured. Qin Mu asked suspiciously, real or fake? It's real. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's complexion grew even paler. You serious? It's true. Veins started to pop out on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's forehead. All right then. Only an empty city remained in place of Daxiang City, which was razed to the ground. There was no medicine store here, so they could only return to Hidden Fog City. There was a lake around here which frequently saturated the air with fog. The city ended up appearing and disappearing in the fog, which was how it got its name. In a governmental office, Qin Mu checked on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries and discovered that there were more than 100 places in which he was wounded. Most of them were internal injuries, and there were even venomous insects in his body. There were also injuries in his divine treasure, but he was lucky he had a dense cultivation which helped him suppress them. The injuries were all different, and the ones that had invaded his divine treasures were especially hard to deal with, testing Qin Mu's medical skills. The injuries in the Spirit Embryo Divine Treasure, 5 Elements Divine Treasure, 6 Directions Divine Treasure, 7 Stars Divine Treasure, Celestial Being Divine Treasure, Life and Death Divine Treasure, and Divine Bridge Divine Treasure were all abnormally hard to deal with. The injuries on the soul were also a huge test. This was a rare opportunity for Qin Mu to learn about the secrets of the divine treasures in great depth. The external injuries, on the other hand, weren't as severe. If he wanted to nurse Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries, it was going to be a huge project. Qin Mu calculated for quite some time before setting his mind on a treatment method and ordering people to collect the herbs. Most of the herbs in the medicine store were ordinary ones, with the precious ones being harder to find. Even though Hidden Fog City was large, there were still many herbs that were unavailable here and required them to seek them out in the capital. Qin Mu first treated the injuries that could be treated with the herbs available. The other injuries would have to wait until they were back in the capital. In the governmental office, Qin Mu ordered to find him an incomparably huge pot. The pot was then filled with water and herbs, and a huge steamer was placed inside to let Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor lie inside naked. Hundreds of needles were pierced into his body, their points reaching his divine treasures. The silver needles were used as a bridge to draw the medicinal energy into the divine treasures. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor lay inside the steamer quietly when he suddenly said, "If the Emperor rewards me with beautiful women and gold, should I want them?" Qin Mu twirled the needle in the heart of his brows. That silver needle had a hollow center, which could help guide the medicinal energy. What else can the Emperor reward you with? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was silent for a moment. There's nothing else. Then you should take them. Qin Mu took another needle and jabbed it into the lungs. Who else is in Imperial Preceptor's house? Other than me, just a few old servants and bodyguards. How much money do you have? The salary every month is enough for me. Do you have a wife or children? With heaven's law in one's heart, what's the need for desire? Imperial Preceptor should start a family. You should stop talking. After I place this needle, I will have to cover the steamer and raise the fire. After half a month, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had regained much of his complexion. While treating him, they had passed by 15 cities, yet Qin Mu had not found all the spirit herbs he needed. However, the injuries were more or less cared for. Qin Mu was proficient in using medicine, so when not having top-quality spirit herbs, he used ordinary ones to replace them. However, some injuries really needed incomparably precious spirit herbs, which left him helpless. When they reached the capital, they saw white lanterns and white banners hanging on numerous streets. After asking around, they learned that North Garrison King Ling Yinfeng had passed away. The emperor was mourning, so the entire empire was grieving. North Garrison King Ling Yinfeng was the younger brother of the former emperor, and was ranked 8. So he was referred to as 8 Imperial Uncle. He was well respected and loved by the people, since when the former emperor was conquering the world, 8 Imperial Uncle had outstanding military service, conquering numerous countries. The injuries he received were very severe, and he had almost died a few times in battle, yet he had also saved the life of the former emperor quite a few times. The successful ascension of Emperor Yang Feng to the throne was due to his support. He played a huge part in paving out the empire of the Ling family. When Qin Mu heard the news, he frowned slightly and took a look at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. The man revealed a mournful expression and said, "I'll be offering my condolences to North Garrison King's manor." Qin Mu asked in a low voice, "Imperial Preceptor, why did North Garrison King rebel?" "His not rebelling against the emperor, his rebelling against me for the empire of his Ling family," Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said in a soft voice. "My power is too great, making him feel uneasy. He thinks I will overturn the rule of Ling family. You're right, it's time for me to start my family. Even with heaven's law in my heart, desires are still needed." Qin Mu had a weird expression. Someone like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor starting a family. It was more or less beyond people's belief, yet it was about to happen. "I shall return to the manor first to change into robes of quiet colors." North Garrison King had contributed to the empire, and even though he didn't agree with my way of handling things, he was still a person deserving respect. I have to pay my respects to him. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor then bowed farewell to Qin Mu. "Now that we're at the capital, you won't have to trouble yourself with my injuries anymore." Qin Mu nodded. Since Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's injuries from the previous ambush had been healed, this meant that he had a divine physician by his side, thus there was no need for Qin Mu to continue treating him. When Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor returned to his manor, he was vigilant. He didn't walk through the main door, but jumped into the manor directly. Looking around at the surroundings, he saw that all the seals were still in their places. Yet he didn't let his guard down and called out solemnly, "Old Fu. Yuan Qing." There was no sound in reply. Imperial Preceptor's manor was unusually quiet. He walked in, and when he reached the hall, he saw his servants and bodyguards tied up and piled together. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor frowned, then saw Fu Yuanqing. Little Poison King Fu Yuanqing was stripped of all his clothes and trussed up on the ceiling of the hall. His tongue was sticking out, a golden rope tied around it. At the other end of the golden rope was a huge iron weight, which was pretty heavy. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor frown deepened, and the sword light on his fingertips flashed, slicing apart the ropes on his body. Fu Yuanqing crashed heavily to the ground, and only then did Imperial Preceptor discover that all the cultivation in the man's body had been sealed, and as well as his divine treasures. Because of this, he couldn't unleash any bit of cultivation. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor broke the seals on him and the other servants and bodyguards. With a solemn face, he asked, "What happened?" "I have no idea." Fu Yuanqing shook his head in shame. "I didn't see anything before I got hung up there. And I didn't see anything even when my tongue was pulled out. A huge iron weight was then tied to it so I couldn't cry for help even if I wanted to." "Old Master, is our manor haunted?" A few servants looked terrified. One of them said, "I also saw nothing before finding myself in the pile of others, unable to move." "Haunted?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "It's not a ghost. That person's speed was too fast, so fast that you guys could not see him. I know who this person is. He must have barged into my manor to take advantage of me not being around to take back his leg. If I'm not wrong, my treasury should also have been emptied out. He brought everyone to the treasury only to see the seal on it still there, untouched." Fu Yuanqing let out a sigh of relief and smiled. "Imperial Preceptor, you have guessed wrong, the seal is still here. I reckon the thief couldn't break your seal, so he didn't touch the items inside." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sighed. "A phantom has no form, he can pilfer the heavens and switch out the sun, so why would he need to break the seal? He can pass through the seal directly, without touching it in the slightest. The treasury is indeed emptied." Everyone didn't believe him. He then opened the seal and pushed the door open, revealing the treasury to be empty, cleaned out to the point it was spick and span. On the room's opposite wall, a painting had been hanging before. It portrayed the back of sword god drawn by heavenly painting country's crown prince, but it was gone without a trace now. In place of it were scribbles that were shocking to read. "Imperial Preceptor, I took back my leg. Thanks for your treasures as well. Your servants were treated quite well by me, so there's no need to worry. Oh. I also slept on your bed, and after I woke up, I took a dump on it. I even made a pot of fragrant tea for you in your study room. Our grudges are thus cleared, but you don't need to thank me." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's expression darkened. He immediately went to his bedroom and lifted the blanket. When the stink permeated the air, he covered his nose and waved his hand. "Old Fu, throw it away, throw it away." Old Fu immediately bundled up the blanket along with the bedsheet, but the stink came from the bed as well. Old Fu asked, "Old Master, do you want to throw the bed away as well?" "Throw it away." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor waved his hand and went to the study room with quick steps. The entire study room had the smell of urine, and the yellowish liquid in the teapot was clearly not tea. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's sleeves swept the teapot out the window along with the teacups, his face black. Disgraceful. Never mind him taking his leg back, but to even eat, sleep, and poop in my manor to spoil my peace. "Old Fu, prepare another tea set and bed." Old Fu hesitated for a moment before saying, "Old Master, there isn't much money left." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was slightly stunned. He then mumbled to himself, "The Emperor's reward will take a few more days to come. My salary comes once every month, but it will only be given at the start of the month. This month's salary is gone." This time Old Master had gone out. "You took more than half of the salary with you. The rest of it was used to send some meager gifts to the kings, dukes, and ministers for their birthdays. Those that had given birth to a son also had to be sent a gift. A few days ago, it was the Empress Dowager's birthday, and the gift I prepared was even disdained for being unpresentable." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's head started to ache. North Garrison King has passed away, so some gifts are needed. Are we really broke? Is there anything we can pawn? This? Old Fu hesitated for a moment, then decided not to say anything. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked around, but even though the house wasn't small, there wasn't a lot of furniture around. There wasn't anything that could be pawned. He always felt that infatuation with fine details prevents one from making progress. So all the stuff he ate and used were simple things, nothing fancy. The things he collected were mostly weird. Cripple's leg, the painting of heavenly painting country's crown prince. Yet even these things were stolen by that thief god. Can we ask for the salary in advance? Old Fu asked, Old Master, do you still want your face? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor hesitated. Could we borrow some? Old Fu shook his head. We recently went to war and the few people that Old Master is well acquainted with have been deployed and are no longer at home. Who would lend me money when the head of their house is not around? Unless Old Master went personally. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor muttered, my painting skills aren't bad and could be sold for some cash. Is Old Master going to sign it? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. If I sign my name, the person buying the painting would be bribing me, I won't sign. Old Fu shook his head. In that case, Old Master's painting won't sell. Those words pissed off Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. How do you know it won't sell? I've had the painting of heavenly painting country's crown prince for a long time, and copied it countless times. Even though I don't dare to say I'm comparable to Art Saint, but shouldn't that be good enough? Old Master, what kind of place is the capital? There are so many famous scholars around that they all look like carps crossing the river. How much do they earn by selling their paintings? More than half of those people are starving to the point they are skin and bones. Old Master, how well do you think your skills fare when compared to theirs? Old Fu then said, on the other hand, Old Master's disciples can lend money to Old Master. Borrow money from my disciples. I can't lower myself to that. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor suddenly thought of Qin Mu and smiled. I know who has money that I can borrow. He's liberal with his money and would usually pay when buying herbs for me. Otherwise, with that salary of mine, it would have been long gone. He's also not in the Imperial Court, so it's not embarrassing to borrow from him. I shall go and borrow money, you guys wait for me here. When Qin Mu returned back to Scholar's residence, he could smell a medicinal fragrance the moment he entered. It seemed to be coming from his courtyard, which bewildered him. Although there were odd job workers cleaning Scholar's residence, every one of them would often go to the hall to sit for lessons, so their cultivations weren't weak. There were some odd job workers who were even stronger than the scholars. In the history of Imperial College, there were quite a few odd jobs workers that had cultivated extraordinary abilities, which allowed them to leap into the position of scholars and be promoted to reputable officers. With odd job workers guarding Scholar's residence, almost no one was able to sneak inside. Qin Mu brought the dragon Chilean and Hu Linga into his courtyard and saw huge bags of herbs piled up in his courtyard. There was even stuff like a medicinal furnace, medicinal cauldron, etc. The medicinal furnace and medicinal cauldron were extraordinary. The markings on them were extremely extraordinary, which made it clear that they were precious treasures. They weren't inferior to the treasures Qin Mu had taken from Roland's golden palace. Inside a medicinal cauldron, there was a leg, and there was an arm in the medicinal furnace. When Qin Mu saw these two limbs, he was slightly stunned. He told Hu Linga and the dragon Chilean, stay guard outside the courtyard and don't let anyone enter. Hu Linga and the dragon Chilean got up and walked out of the courtyard. Qin Mu turned his head back to see the dragon Chilean squeezing through the creaking door frames and shook his head. This fellow is getting fatter by the day, very soon he'll probably break my door, and I'll have to get a new one again. He pushed open the door to the main room and saw two men that were old and yet not that old sitting inside. Cripple had tidied himself. His hair was glossy black, while the beard under his chin was also tied up with a dazzling golden thread. The clothes he was wearing were also quite tastefully chosen. Old Ma sat opposite him, and wore green clothing that wasn't as gaudy as Cripple's. One of his sleeves drooped down emptily, and he looked travel-worn. He must have arrived not too long ago, so his sideburns were grizzled and his hair was messy. When they saw Qin Mu walking in, Cripple revealed a simple smile, while old Ma's cold face brightened up. Grandpa Ma, Grandpa Cripple. Qin Mu felt moved and his eyes grew red. Are you two here to see me? No, old Ma replied. Qin Mu felt hurt and Cripple smiled. You are living more comfortably than us. So why do we have to come and see you? You're just someone we picked up, so why would we travel thousands of miles just to see you? Don't think too much. Qin Mu retorted angrily. You're clearly here to see me. Cripple shook his head. I'm just here to have you reattach my leg. Can you help me see if my leg is still alive? I won't. Cripple flew into a fury. You rascal, turning independent. We're certainly not here to see you. Old Ma gave a cough and said unhurriedly, if you're not here to see him, why didn't you bring your leg to apothecary instead? Stop teasing him, look at him, he's about to cry. I'm not crying, Qin Mu said, putting up an act. All right, stop crying, I'm here to see you. I just returned from Imperial Preceptor's manor, having stayed there for quite some time. I also took some items while I'm there as well. Do you see that leg in the cauldron? This elder was very proud of himself. My leg. I took it back from Imperial Preceptor's manor, and Imperial Preceptor couldn't do anything about it. He could only look at me helplessly as I took back my leg. Qin Mu kept quiet for a moment before letting out a warm smile. Grandpa Cripple, Imperial Preceptor, and I just came back. So what Imperial Preceptor was there in the Imperial Preceptor's manor? Cripple stared at him, and Qin Mu didn't give in, staring right back. The smiles on their faces were similarly warm, and gave others a feeling that they could be trusted. Even if one was stabbed by them, they would still think they deserved to be trusted. Part 1 end here.